A photograph trembled in the small hands of 7-year-old Lucas Carter as he stood before Judge Emily Dawson. Lucas had spent his entire life navigating the foster care system's 7 homes in 8 years. Each move had taught him to stay quiet, bury his memories, and never expect stability. Yet, some things refused to be forgotten: the soft lullaby, the comforting rhythm of a heartbeat, and the face in the photograph he clutched tightly. A fragile connection to a past he didn't fully understand. Judge Emily Dawson was renowned for her unwavering commitment to justice in family court. For over a decade, she had been a beacon of hope for countless children, tackling the most complex and heartbreaking cases with precision and resolve. But beneath her professional armor lay a deeply personal grief. A wound she had carried silently for years, a wound that shaped her relentless pursuit of justice. Today, however, was different. The courtroom held its breath as Lucas broke his usual silence, looking directly at Judge Dawson with tear-filled eyes. "You're my mom," he whispered, his voice barely audible but filled with certainty. What followed would unravel a decades-long conspiracy of stolen children, falsified documents, and unthinkable corruption. Stay tuned to discover how one boy's courage and one mother's unyielding love uncovered the truth, brought justice to countless families, and exposed the darkest corners of the system. 15 years ago, Judge Emily Dawson's life was forever changed. What should have been the happiest moment of her life, welcoming her newborn son, turned into a nightmare. Complications during her pregnancy had led to an emergency delivery. And when she awoke in the hospital, a nurse informed her with sympathetic eyes that her baby hadn't survived. Emily never even got to hold him. Grief consumed her in the months that followed. Her once bright world turned into an empty, hollow shell. But instead of succumbing to despair, Emily channeled her pain into purpose. Leaving her corporate legal career behind, she devoted herself to family law, determined to protect the most vulnerable children who had no one else to fight for them. Over the years, she built a reputation as a compassionate yet unyielding judge, taking on the toughest cases with remarkable precision. Her courtroom became a place where justice wasn't just served, it was demanded. Despite her professional success, Emily carried the weight of her loss silently. The memory of her son lingered in every unspoken moment, every closed case. What she didn't know was that her loss was far from what it seemed. Lucas Carter's life had been anything but stable. Abandoned as an infant, he entered the foster care system with no records of his biological family. Over the next 8 years, he moved through 7 foster homes. Each new placement brought fresh challenges. Some foster families were overwhelmed by his trauma. Others simply didn't want the responsibility. One family even claimed Lucas scared their dog by screaming in his sleep. Through it all, Lucas never gave up. He carried a photograph everywhere he went. A tattered piece of his past that he couldn't explain but instinctively knew was important. His resilience shone through in small ways: the way he clung to hope, the way he quietly observed the world around him, waiting for a chance to feel truly safe. But rejection left scars. Lucas learned to speak only when spoken to make himself invisible to avoid being sent away again. His journey was one of survival. But he never stopped dreaming of finding the person in the photograph, the one he somehow knew would finally understand him. Little did Lucas know, his search for belonging and Emily's search for justice would collide in a way that neither could have ever imagined. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of courtroom 307, casting long shadows across the polished wooden floor. Judge Emily Dawson sat behind her imposing bench, her presence commanding yet approachable. On this day, however, her usual air of calm professionalism was unsettled. In front of her stood Lucas Carter. An 8-year-old boy with hollow eyes and a demeanor far too serious for his age. He clutched a crumpled photograph in his small hands as if it were the most precious thing in the world. Lucas was just another case in the long list of children shuffled through the system. Yet there was something about him that tugged at Emily's well-guarded heart. Lucas's foster parents, the Turners, had filed a request to have him removed from their care. Their claims of his disruptive behavior grated on Emily, who had heard similar excuses far too many times. But before she could call for a recess to deliberate, Lucas did something no one expected. He stood up abruptly, the photograph slipping from his trembling hands and landing softly on the floor. His wide, tear-filled eyes met Judge Dawson's with an intensity that silenced the room. "You're my mom," he whispered, his voice steady yet laced with vulnerability. A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom as all eyes turned to Emily. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Emily's professional composure faltered, her breath catching as the weight of Lucas's words crashed over her. Her heart pounded fiercely as she stared into the boy's unwavering gaze, his plea echoing in her mind. Emily's mind raced. She had heard countless pleas in her courtroom, but nothing like this. Professionally, she knew she needed to remain composed, to dismiss the statement as the imagination of a traumatized child. But something about Lucas's words and his eyes, so familiar, made her chest tighten. She leaned forward slightly, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. "Lucas, why do you think I'm your mom?" she asked gently. Lucas hesitated, his small frame trembling. "I remember you," he said finally, his voice breaking. "I've seen your face, in my dreams." Emily's hands gripped the edges of her bench. Her logical mind told her it was impossible. Her son, Benjamin, had died 8 years ago. She had the death certificate to prove it. But her instincts, honed by years of listening to children's unfiltered truths, told her something wasn't right. Emily gestured for the bailiff to retrieve the photograph Lucas had dropped. Her hands trembled slightly as she examined the faded, creased image. It was a photo of a young woman cradling an infant, a moment of tenderness frozen in time. Emily's breath hitched as the realization struck her: the woman in the photo was her. The image transported her back 8 years. To the final days of her pregnancy. She remembered posing for the photo, her smile filled with hopeful anticipation despite the challenges she faced. Now, seeing it again, the memories flooded back. Bittersweet and overwhelming. Almost too much to bear. She glanced back at Lucas, whose eyes mirrored her own in a way that made denial impossible. Memories she had tried to suppress flooded back, decorating the nursery, choosing the name Benjamin, the devastating moment when she was told he hadn't survived. The coincidence seemed too precise, the timing too perfect. Emily's heart warred with her professional instincts. Could this boy truly be her son? As the courtroom buzzed with whispers, Emily's usually sharp mind was clouded with doubt and emotion. If Lucas was telling the truth, then everything she believed about her son's death was a lie. She struggled to reconcile the impossible: her son, alive after all these years. Her hands trembled as she placed the photograph on her desk. "Ms. Martinez," she called to the caseworker seated nearby, her voice firmer now. "I need every detail about Lucas's background. Every record you can find. Start with his entry into the foster care system. The caseworker hesitated. Your Honor. The records are incomplete. His file is full of gaps. Emily interrupted, her tone leaving no room for argument. Then find what's missing. I need answers. Lucas watched her intently, his face a mixture of fear and hope. Emily took a deep breath, trying to maintain her composure. Lucas, she said softly. Do you remember where you got this photo? He nodded. It was in my blanket when I was a baby, he replied. I kept it because I knew it was important. Emily's resolve hardened. She couldn't ignore the evidence in front of her. Lucas's eyes, his mannerisms, and the photograph that linked them. But if he truly was her son, how had he ended up in the foster system? And why had she been told he was dead? The courtroom proceedings came to a halt as Emily declared a recess. As the courtroom emptied, she sat alone at her bench, staring at the photograph. The weight of the moment was crushing. If Lucas was her son, then someone had orchestrated an unthinkable deception. Emily knew she couldn't let her emotions cloud her judgment. But the evidence was too compelling to dismiss. Her mind was flooded with questions. Who was behind this? How had they managed to falsify a death certificate? And most importantly, how many other families had suffered similar fates? As she rose from her seat, clutching the photograph tightly, Emily made a silent vow. She would uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Lucas deserved answers, and so did she. Together, they would confront the past and expose the secrets that had kept them apart for so long. After the courtroom revelation, Judge Emily Dawson didn't waste any time. She called in Sarah Martinez, a seasoned child welfare caseworker, and Marcus Hull, a private investigator she had worked with on past cases. Together, they began to unravel the mystery surrounding Lucas Carter. The first step was examining Lucas's case file. But it was riddled with inconsistencies and missing information. His birth records were non-existent, and the documentation from his first foster placement was suspiciously vague. The deeper they dug, the more Emily suspected foul play. Sarah uncovered that Lucas had been placed in the system as an infant with no explanation of how or why. The hospital where he was born, Riverside Memorial, had a history of unusual adoption practices. But every inquiry was met with dead ends. Frustrated but determined, Marcus began tracing financial transactions linked to the hospital and adoption agencies. What he found was shocking: large sums of money flowing through accounts tied to private adoption networks, often with minimal oversight. Emily's personal connection to the case intensified her resolve. If Lucas was her son, it meant someone had falsified his death certificate and orchestrated his disappearance. It was more than negligence, it was criminal. As the investigation expanded, the team uncovered a horrifying pattern. The scheme wasn't isolated to one hospital or agency, it was a nationwide network involving stolen babies, forged documents, and systemic corruption. Wealthy families desperate for children were paying exorbitant fees for what they believed were legal private adoptions. Behind the scenes, doctors, nurses, social workers, and even judges were complicit in a massive trafficking operation. Emily's team connected with Jenny Price, a nurse who had worked at Riverside Memorial 8 years ago. Jenny had long suspected unethical practices at the hospital but had been too afraid to come forward. Now, She was ready to share what she knew. Jenny revealed that the hospital had a secretive process for handling complicated births. Mothers who were told their babies had died were often young, vulnerable, or without strong support systems. The babies were then funneled into private adoption networks, with falsified death certificates ensuring no one questioned the disappearances. Jenny had kept detailed records, including photographs, birth logs, and even secretly recorded conversations with hospital administrators. Her most damning evidence included a USB drive containing financial transactions and correspondence that directly implicated key players in the trafficking ring. One of the pivotal moments in the investigation came when Emily and her team secured a DNA test. Lucas was hesitant, unsure what the results would mean. But Emily reassured him. When the results came back, the confirmation was undeniable: 99.9% probability of maternity. Emily's heart broke as she realized the extent of the deception that had stolen 8 years from her and her son. Armed with Jenny's evidence and the DNA results, Emily approached the FBI. Special Agent Rachel Taylor, an experienced investigator specializing in organized crime, took over the case. As the FBI launched a full-scale investigation, Emily worked closely with them, providing key insights and testimony. The evidence Jenny provided was the cornerstone of the FBI's operation. It exposed a network that spanned multiple states, with hospitals, adoption agencies, and even government officials implicated. Arrest warrants were issued for doctors, social workers, and hospital administrators involved in the scheme. The FBI's investigation also uncovered offshore accounts where millions of dollars in trafficking profits were stored. These funds, along with detailed records of transactions, painted a grim picture of an operation that had victimized hundreds of families. The arrests began at dawn, with FBI agents raiding Riverside Memorial Hospital and several adoption agencies. The news spread quickly, sparking outrage across the country. Emily and Lucas watched the coverage from their living room, both relieved and overwhelmed by the scope of what they had uncovered. As more evidence came to light, it became clear that Lucas's case was just the tip of the iceberg. The network had been operating for decades, targeting mothers like Emily who were in vulnerable situations. Each story that emerged was heartbreaking, but it also strengthened Emily's resolve to see justice served. Throughout the investigation, Emily remained by Lucas's side, offering him the stability and love he had been denied for so long. She helped him process his trauma while ensuring he knew he was no longer alone. At the same time, she used her platform as a judge to advocate for systemic changes to prevent such atrocities from happening again. Emily's journey was no longer just about her son, it was about every child who had been stolen, every mother who had been lied to, and every family that had been shattered. Together with the FBI and advocates like Jenny, Emily vowed to bring the perpetrators to justice and shine a light on the darkness that had hidden their crimes for so long. By the time the first trials began, Emily had become a national symbol of resilience and justice. Lucas, too, found his voice, sharing his story to inspire other children still searching for their families. Together, they turned their pain into purpose, proving that even in the face of unimaginable loss, love and courage could prevail. After the devastating revelations, Judge Emily Dawson made a silent vow: she would stop at nothing to ensure Lucas was safe and that justice was served not only for him but for every family that had been torn apart by the conspiracy. Her years on the bench had prepared her for difficult cases, but this time it was personal. The pain of losing her son had fueled her resolve. And now, with him by her side, she found a renewed sense of purpose. Emily partnered closely with the FBI as they delved deeper into the network of corruption. She shared her insights from years of presiding over family court cases, helping them identify patterns of systemic abuse and fraud. Every new piece of evidence strengthened her determination. For Emily, it wasn't enough to bring the criminals to justice. She wanted to reform the system to ensure no other family would endure what she had. The FBI's investigation expanded rapidly. Agents uncovered more hospitals, adoption agencies, and officials involved in the trafficking network. Records revealed hundreds of stolen children, each case more heartbreaking than the last. Emily worked tirelessly alongside Agent Rachel Taylor, helping to interview witnesses and victims. Lucas's story became a cornerstone of the investigation. His courage in speaking up had broken the silence, and his memories provided critical details that connected key players in the conspiracy. As Emily saw more families reunited through the investigation, her determination grew stronger. The arrests began with a series of high-profile raids. Doctors, nurses, social workers, and administrators were taken into custody. Among them were prominent figures who had long evaded suspicion, their crimes hidden behind a facade of professionalism and compassion. As the trials commenced, the courtrooms were filled with emotional testimonies. Mothers shared the anguish of being told their babies had died, only to discover years later that their children had been sold into adoption. Children who had grown up feeling abandoned spoke about their pain and confusion, finally finding answers to questions they had carried their entire lives. Emily played a dual role in these proceedings. As a judge, she upheld the law, ensuring the trials were fair and thorough. As a mother, she provided support to other families, standing by them as they faced the difficult process of confronting their pasts. The fallout from the investigation was immense. Hospitals faced lawsuits, adoption agencies were shut down, and corrupt officials were sentenced to lengthy prison terms. The public was outraged as the extent of the conspiracy became clear. News outlets covered the story extensively, calling it one of the largest child trafficking scandals in the nation's history. Emily became a prominent voice for change, using her platform to advocate for systemic reforms. She worked with lawmakers to pass new legislation aimed at increasing transparency in adoption processes and holding institutions accountable. One of the most heartwarming outcomes of the investigation was the reunion of families who had been torn apart. Emily witnessed countless emotional moments as mothers embraced children they had thought lost forever. One mother, Maria Hernandez, wept as she reunited with her 10-year-old daughter, Sophia, who had been taken from her as an infant. "I never stopped looking for you," Maria whispered through tears as she held Sophia close. Another family, the Thompsons, had thought their son had died shortly after birth. Seeing him walk through the door as a 12-year-old boy was a moment they described as miraculous. Emily's own journey with Lucas became a beacon of hope for these families. Despite the trauma he had endured, Lucas began to heal, finding joy in the small, everyday moments he shared with his mother. His transformation from a silent, withdrawn boy into a confident and caring child inspired others to believe in the power of love and resilience. Emily's vow extended beyond the courtroom. She worked tirelessly with support organizations to provide counseling and resources for affected families. She collaborated with the FBI to create a nationwide database to reunite more children with their biological families. Lucas, too, found his purpose. He began speaking publicly about his experience, encouraging other children to come forward and share their stories. His bravery became a symbol of hope, proving that even in the darkest times, the truth could prevail. Though much had been accomplished, Emily knew the fight wasn't over. The ripple effects of the conspiracy would take years to fully address, and the trauma inflicted on families couldn't be undone overnight. But she remained steadfast, driven by the knowledge that justice was finally being served. For Emily and Lucas, their journey was more than a fight for justice. It was a testament to the unbreakable bond between a mother and her child. Together, they had turned pain into purpose, proving that love could conquer even the greatest injustices. As the investigation continued to uncover more victims and perpetrators, Emily's story stood as a powerful reminder that courage and determination could bring light to even the darkest corners of society. After the storm of court hearings, investigations, and arrests, life for Judge Emily Dawson and Lucas Carter began to settle into a new rhythm. For the first time in years, Emily felt the warmth of family in her home. Lucas, once a quiet and withdrawn boy, was now a lively and curious child. The weight of his past seemed to lift as he found stability and love with his mother. Together, they discovered a new world of firsts: Lucas's first trip to the park with his mom, his first birthday celebration, and his first experience of what it meant to belong. Emily cherished every moment. From reading bedtime stories to hearing Lucas's laughter echo through the house, she marveled at his resilience and how, despite everything he had endured, he could still find joy and wonder in life. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day. Emily encouraged Lucas to express his feelings and talk about his experiences. And in doing so, she found her own healing. They began volunteering together, supporting families affected by the same corruption that had nearly destroyed their own lives. Their shared mission became a cornerstone of their relationship, a way to turn their pain into purpose and ensure no child or parent would endure the same injustice again. Emily and Lucas's journey resonated far beyond their own lives. Their story became the spark for a national movement, exposing corruption in the foster care and adoption systems and reuniting countless families. The FBI's investigation, fueled by Emily's determination and Lucas's courage, uncovered a network of child trafficking that spanned decades. The media dubbed it the Lucas case, and it became a symbol of hope and justice. Families who had lost children began coming forward, inspired by Emily's unwavering fight for the truth. The movement led to sweeping reforms in adoption laws, stricter regulations for private agencies, and the creation of national databases to ensure transparency in child welfare cases. Support organizations sprang up across the country, offering counseling, legal aid, and advocacy for affected families. Reunited parents and children shared their emotional stories, reminding the world of the power of love and persistence. Emily became a leading voice in these efforts, traveling to speak at conferences, meeting with lawmakers, and mentoring other families navigating similar challenges. Lucas, too, played a vital role. His bravery in sharing his experiences encouraged other children to speak up. He became an advocate in his own right, reminding people that even the smallest voices could spark great change. Emily and Lucas's story wasn't just about exposing a criminal empire, it was about the enduring strength of love and the courage to fight for what's right. Their journey proved that even in the darkest moments, miracles are possible when love never gives up. As Emily often said in her speeches, Lucas's courage didn't just reunite us, it started a revolution of truth. Together, we've shown that justice is possible. And hope can prevail, no matter the odds. Their story continues to inspire families, advocates, and individuals across the nation. Lucas's laughter now fills a home that was once silent. And Emily's determination has reshaped a system that once betrayed her. As the sun sets on their quiet evenings together, Lucas often asks Emily, "Do you think we helped enough people today?" Her answer is always the same, yes. But we'll help even more tomorrow. Because for Emily and Lucas, their fight for justice and healing is far from over. Together, they are proof that love, courage, and the truth can overcome anything. What did you think of Lucas and Emily's incredible journey? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. If their story inspired you, don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who needs a little hope today. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss more incredible stories of courage, resilience, and the unbreakable bond between loved ones. And don't forget, tomorrow's episode features another inspiring journey of hope and perseverance that will leave you speechless. Stay tuned.